I actually had a ritual that when I go to tournaments, I would pick a song for the tournament. And before every round of the tournament, I would listen to that song. And this was back in like the actual Discman days, you know. I had to carry around a CD player and everything, boombox on the shoulder, you know. But
everyone's got to listen to this song right now.
Bring out that big binder, start flipping through the CDs, right?
I actually have something similar with the world songs.
Oh, they're great.
And I try to not listen to them unless I have like a big match coming up because I feel like it'll take some of the intensity out of them, right? It's like I don't want to normalize it too much.
League makes a lot of really good music. I actually specifically do my deadlifts to Giants by True Damage. It randomly came on when I was working out one time. So I'm like, this is perfect. So I just listen to that every single time I do deadlift.
That's amazing.
Moving too fast, life moving in slow-mo. I'm a god, but I act if you don't know. Homie, better put your pride aside. I'm a Benz, get more like a Volvo. Your best stuff looks like my words. Synapses, fire, and burst. Got the whole crew with me, about to do damage. You know we ain't average. I ain't gonna say this again, but it's in my time. Better look in my eyes. I'm a genius in the skies with my heart on my sleeve. You force you a block to a king in his prime. Everybody got a line. Sit back with the stars in line. I finesse like my life on the 9 was a diamond in the rough, and now I shine.
No one could stop us, they'll try, but they won't.
For those who don't know, Kibler is a Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer. He's one of the best of all time. And recently you've been into Hearthstone as well. Mm-hmm. You were a caster for Hearthstone for a while. And what are you up to these days?
Mostly doing like streaming Hearthstone stuff. I actually stream some League every now and then. I'm not very good, but yeah, you know, I've been doing the collectible card game thing for forever now. I did game design for a while, but it's been a while since I did that.
So I don't know if this is a weird question for you to answer. Are you the Magic GOAT?
No.
Okay.
Who would you say is?
John Finkel.
Okay.
Or actually, there's arguments for Paulo Vitor Damarosa these days.
Okay.
He's actually the current reigning Magic World Champion, and he's just like been really dominant for a long time. But John was like one of the OG best of the best kind of people, and it's still like kind of stuck in my brain that it's like he's the best.
Okay, I'm curious. So my past teammates, Mickey and Cavs, they used to play a little Magic. Mm-hmm. So I got basically to play Magic with them. Like, how do you value who is the best Magic player?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different factors that go into like how good you are at a game like Magic or a game like Hearthstone. Like they're card games that by their nature have elements of randomness. So like you can't just say this person won all these tournaments, so they're definitively the best, right?
Yeah.
But Magic has been around for a very long time, right? So there's results of tournaments spanning a very long time, and also just like as someone who has had success and is like just a good player of the game, be able to like watch someone play and be like, oh, that play they made was like really impressive because like, or seeing someone make a play and be like, oh, I didn't even think of that, right? Be able to be successful like across, a wide range of formats over time. Kind of like a bunch of just different metagames in League of Legends, right? And you have to be able to adapt to all of those and be successful in a wide range of those sort of formats. That's kind of a hallmark of being a good player.
The conversation though around how to evaluate whether or not a player is good in League of Legends is an infinitely intriguing one because I think it's near impossible. I think it's evidenced by the fact that like from split to split, from year to year, you have players who were at one point talked about as like, oh my God, this is the second coming of Jesus, or Faker or whatever, to what happened to them. They're not good anymore. I just don't know when you have constant changing rosters, environments, metas, different champions suit different players. It just gets impossible to understand or say like, this player's done, they're past their prime.
Yeah, I've always had a lot of trouble rating individual players, especially when I haven't played against them, because I feel like so much of your own performance comes down to like just the team, right? Because I think you can have a really good player in a bad environment. For example, like I don't think any of the players on CLG are just like, the worst player of all time, but when you watch them play, they look like the worst players of all time because sometimes it can just be the atmosphere, like how pressure you're feeling, and a lot of it just comes down to the teamwork.
So, Luka, you're going to be playing TSM this weekend, right? And TSM is one of these teams that's been considered a top team, not necessarily first place material. What's your view on them?
I think what TSM is doing, like, honestly, is just great, It's like they were trying to break out of their bubble, break out of the comfort zone. Mm-hmm. They've been trying a lot of different picks, different comps, and they were getting some wins with it as well. So that is what you need to do. I think for them, like, having an identity as a mage team mid is, like, not bad, Like, a lot of if you look back at it, like there's not a single player in the world that can play everything. That's just a fact. Like even the best like players, teams that have won worlds. Like, for example, when IG won worlds in season 8, like I know when we played against them, like if they would get like a Urgot or a Aatrox or Aurelia or a Kali, any of the OP champs that were OP at those worlds, we knew they were all going top lane. Like Rookie didn't play any of them. His picks, they were like still good in the meta, but it's like they had their playstyle, right? The Shy carries and Rookie and Ning supplement that, right? The only one you can argue is like Damwon. Yeah, they were like so good, you know, they could play every champ, and it is like partially true. I would say Damwon is probably the best team that has ever won worlds.
Really?
And you
Yeah.
don't think that they had a defined identity?
Yeah, I think, I mean, they did have a defined, they were like playing on jungle, right? But it's like, the whole meta was playing on jungle, and every team at those worlds was playing on jungle, so I can't even say that's their identity. But it's like, if we don't somehow headshot them, snipe them in draft, you know, we don't know what they're bad at, because their win rates, they don't say they're bad at something, or their playstyle, they're winning LCK 3-0 every time, you know? So it's like, and overall it's like, the Shy can play literally every single champ in the game. He can play carry, he can play tank, he can play Lulu top, you know? So it's just like, it's really hard to draft, not the Shy, sorry, the Guri. Oh, I'm saying the Shy, like he's like traumatized me so hard.
It's in your head still.
Close my eyes and I see him.
Yeah, he traumatized me so hard since the date.
If you look at every World Championship League of Legends team, they have a defined style. That would be my case for saying that having a defined style is a good thing, because the winner of the World Championship has a defined style, and it typically then dictates the way that most other teams then try and play.
Yeah.
Right? And so whether or not it's the current best way to play, defining a play style and becoming the best at it can make you the world champion, and you can now dictate what everyone else is chasing. So I think in a lot of ways it is the thing you should be doing. You're not always going to hit the money, with it.
So what you're saying is my 20 straight games of Volibear are the best way to play League of Legends.
To get to Diamond, one-tricking is 100% one of the best things to do. I mean, even to get to Challenger, you can one-trick your way there, right?
True.
Like, to become a pro player, that's where things start to break down.
Yeah, Volley's actually one of my highest win rate in solo queue as well.
He's strong as hell right now.
Oh, he's great in solo queue.
Yeah.
He's
So now keep
fantastic.
going, man.
He also just
Keep
looks
going.
like my dog, so it's perfect.
Boom.
Perfect.
Kismet.
쏟아져 빛이 멀게 된 눈이 멈추지 않아 Once we go 날카로운 날로 모든 배워 빨리 달려 넌 못 따라와 True damage we do it True damage 보여줄게 뭐든 쉽게 이기든 지든 My crew make the beat go.
I think something that people might not know about you is you were a former TFT pro.
I was, yeah. So I played TFT since set 1. And I found that I was really good at the game, so I actually left my job last year to follow a little bit of a dream of being a professional game player, because I was really good at League also around Grandmaster, but this is before like League of Legends esports was like a really big thing, and I had just never been able to push myself past that gap between like you're playing with pros to your pro level. But with TFT, I found I was hitting Challenger multiple times, so yeah, I played professionally for most of 2020.
You were one of the people I learned how to play TFT from.
No way.
Yeah, your stream
shit.
was That's Primal.
Yeah.
And I watched. You had like your dog in the background.
Yeah,
It was good
Uzi.
vibes.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you learned.
TFT's like every, half year, there's just totally new pieces entirely.
So I think there's a few things that make TFT really hard to follow. It's a fact that you need to know how to play pretty much everything, right? Because there's not bans in TFT. Like when something's broken, everyone just contests that pick, right? So you'll have a meta where like hyper rolling is really in fashion. And then you have to think, oh, do I know how to play that comp, and should I contest it when like 3 other people in the lobby are going for it? Or do I understand what the next best comp is? And then I can pivot to that comp. I mean, there's no way to be a high level player in that game and not make it like a part-time job.
You remember that time that we randomly got queued together?
Yeah.
And then we ended up playing a few more games together.
Wait,
but like
who placed higher?
me, I won like 3 games in a row. I literally played a game with you and Yuna. I had like won that one game. I like rejoined. They're like, okay, like are you smurfing? Like what's going on? And I was like, no, I suck at this game. And then like ended up getting first the next like 2 or 3 games in a row with them as well.
Hustling.
And it was like, what's going on?
It's so over my head.
Yeah.
All I do is like I put my tanks in the front.
Yeah.
I put my characters
Exactly,
behind
right?
them.
The
If there's-
basics.
The
basics.
That's for
If
you
I'm getting
go.
killed by assassins, I'll put them in a corner and like that's it. I don't know.
Boom, diamond. Kibler, you went into retirement and then came out of retirement to win. Was that your first major that you won after your retirement?
So yeah, I had basically stopped competing in Magic. I competed when I was in high school, then when I was in college, and then after I made a top 8, like a single Pro Tour top 8, and then I stopped competing. Ended up going to work in game design for a while, and then they announced that there would be a Magic Hall of Fame, and I'm like, I want to be in that. And I knew that based on my previous results, I was good. And I knew that I was good, but I didn't realistically have the results to actually get into the Hall of Fame. So I decided to start competing again, and I won a qualifier for the Pro Tour. I made top 8 of that Pro Tour, and then I won the next Pro Tour. So
That's actually dope.
and then I got voted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've always thought the term retirement, especially with us gamers, is it's kind of a troll term because there's so many times where a player will retire, then unretire a year later, and to me, I'm like, I would just consider it taking a break. Right now, I'm not playing in LCS. I wouldn't be at the level to play in LCS right now if I tried to come back, but I'm sure if I grinded out the game, I could get to that level again. But I don't consider myself retired because it's not something I've closed the door on. Retiring makes it sound like I need a walker and I'm gonna go live in an assisted living home. I can still play. I can still use my mouse.
I do think that, for me, I had stopped playing for reasons that were outside of I don't really want to compete anymore kind of thing. And I think that there's sort of this notion that, competitive gaming has sort of an age limit, right? And there's people who are they're washed up, they're 26 or whatever it is, Seriously, there are people who are oh, you're too old, And I think a lot of that is people who just kind of make different life decisions that, take them away from competing in games, because competing in games at the highest level takes so much of your time and attention and energy, and frequently stops you from being able to have a lot of,
Healthy relationships.
Yes, yeah.
You can't be competing at 100% year round. I'm curious how you grapple with that concept from a League of Legends perspective.
It's definitely strategized over the course of the year. First when I just became a pro, I had no idea about anything. I'm just a random kid, from school, that I know nothing about,
Right.
And it's I'm just playing video games for a living. It's fucking great, But then I'm experiencing this burnout. I'm 17, and I'm in Korea, and I'm crying in my room, and I want to go home, And
Right.
then I enter the worlds, and I'm crying. I don't want to be a pro player anymore, And I've experienced all these things that I've realized the consequences of my actions, that what I've done throughout the year has not been working out, right? For myself, I have this thing where I will try really hard in the beginning of season just to get a good start, and then I will usually take a break in the middle of split, or break. I'll just play less. For example, I've been playing low solo queue. Last couple of weeks, I've had 50 games average in week. That's actually a lot.
Yeah,
and
that's a ton.
Now, last week I played 10, for example. I just played 1 or 2 after scrims, and then just spend more time with my teammates or just do something else, right? So it's kind of splitting your time and knowing when are you supposed to practice, and also shockingly, I see benefits to taking a break,
Absolutely. I think it's something that needs to be talked about and normalized more in esports, particularly when you consider that when games change and evolve and metas shift, what you're playing in week 2 of spring is not going to be the world's meta, right? And so
Or even
to
playoffs.
to some degree, the time you're investing there isn't valuable, right? For the ultimate goal. Yes, it's important in the week-to-week move. It's important to ultimately position yourself to make playoffs and all of that. Yes, there is importance on it. But the degree to which you need to be pushing at that point probably doesn't match what you need to be doing near the end of the year when you're moving into Worlds. And it's okay, now I need to dedicate for this final run.
Pacing as a team is very important. I think right now in Cloud9 we are failing as that, because there was a change in the roster that that made us more aware in some sense of our communication and how we speak to each other and stuff like that, but it set us down in gameplay. So now we wanted to ramp that up, because obviously you want to have a good seeding for playoffs, right? So it's now we're ending up just getting no breaks whatsoever, but I do think it's kind of needed in the situation we are in. So maybe if we win 3 games next week, we can chill on a bit,
Yeah.
But if we don't, then we're
Then you're grinding.
Then we're grinding for the rest of the split, and then if we make Worlds, then we're basically having a few days off, and we have to fly to China instantly. So it might be a hard year for us right now, But like I realize now, like I can't like really victimize myself or my team or something. You know, like we are pro players. Like in the end, this is like what we are paid for, and you know, a good amount of money as well.
No,
so I can't complain. You know, I can't complain about it. But there's like definitely aspects of like the mental well-being and that do need to be taken into consideration. Though Cloud9 is treating us very well, and we do have like physical therapy and like yeah, that as well. Yeah, but it's like we have like we're
Perkz is like, all right, fine, I'll practice today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fine. We can scream second block.
When we scream next week, I need another car.
Yeah,
Maybe a Ferrari.
I keep on shattering time. I might just leave you behind. Homie, you stuck on rewind. You just quit sleeping on mines. You got your back on recline. When I damage your delicate spine, please don't act out, shy and surprise.
How do you evaluate like whether you've just had a bad tournament or you played badly or that someone else played super well or they just got like a bad hand?
There's a lot of decisions you make, right? The decision in Magic, it's the decision of like what deck did I bring to the tournament, right? It's kind of like, you know, what did we draft? You know, it might look like you're awful, but like, oh, you just had a terrible draft matchup or something. Similarly, like maybe just bring the wrong deck to a Magic tournament or Hearthstone tournament, right? And sometimes you can just get a huge edge there. Like I've had tournaments where like, you know, I'm just like, okay, well, like I just have the best deck in the entire tournament by far, and it's crushed everybody. And it's like, okay, well, this was easy. I could have made terrible mistakes multiple points during the tournament, and can definitely look at tournaments that I like, you know, won, and I'm like, yeah, I screwed up here, but like whatever, I was carried by the decisions I made beforehand.
How does that work in Magic tournaments with decks then? Is it like when you start a tournament, you lock in your deck for that whole tournament and you can't switch it?
So there's different types of tournaments. The average tournament will be, you know, you'll bring a deck, and that's the deck that you play throughout the entire tournament. Typically, you know, you'll have a deck and then what's called a sideboard, which is, you know, you can switch out cards in between games against, you know, depending on what deck your opponent is playing. And there's also just like ways to get big advantages through those small decisions.
That makes sense. I think your analogy with the draft was really interesting for that, because I noticed that in League a lot too, where especially during the regular season, I feel like either by luck or just being better at reading the meta, certain teams will find the better champions, and then you get all these wins, even if you're not particularly playing well. But then usually I think what happens was when playoffs comes around...
100 Thieves.
Oh, there it is. Oh.
They've got
So they had the best meta read from the
in the
get-go?
beginning of Split? I think so, by far, yeah. I think Ripert contacted his Asian friends and got us some good meta read. People, or from what I got, I don't actually... No offense, I don't watch broadcasts a lot or like any social media, but for I got it, people were hailing.
I can't.
they were like, Hunt is the best team in LCS, you know? And I think that they were good and they were doing some good things, but it's like, they were like so carried by the draft. And I think as the time goes on, we can kind of see that in their play, that they're not bad, but they are not like insane unless they have like just a better draft than any team, right? I just like jumped in, you know.
Yo,
that's a random 100 Thieves bash.
I mean, I do think that sort of thing, like, it plays out in both types of games, right? Like, you'll have, you know, for instance, like, a lot of the sort of big Magic tournaments would be like right after the release of a new set. So the people who can like react and figure out, okay, what's good before other people, they can get a huge edge. You'll have tournaments where people come in and no one else has figured out, you know, this deck. Like the World Championships in like 2013, I think. Like I was like the only person in the entire tournament who played this particular deck that I like went undefeated with. And like there was another tournament, there was like the Team World Cup the next day. Half the field played my deck because they were just like, this deck's insane. And like, you know, it was like the most popular and most successful deck. But like that sort of thing, it sort of trickles off, right? You can only have your advantage because you know Karma Xin Zhao is so good for so long until people start banning your Karma or banning your Xin Zhao or like adapting to it in a different way.
Or taking it themselves.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Once, you know, and like, it's interesting because the teams that have both the sort of better ability to adapt and just the better ability to execute, like long term, once that sort of information filters out and like the, you know, people can take advantage of it and no one has that specific like informational advantage anymore, it sort of changes who has the edge.
It's rarely that rewarding to be the first person to come up with something, is what I've learned. I've always been somebody, like when a new champion comes out or whatever, I learn how to play against it first before I'm never that guy who's like, yo guys, like let's pick this new stuff, let's try to cheese everybody, like let's just beat them with the new thing, it's so good. I'm more like, you know, if it's good, they'll beat me with it, and then I'll check it out.
That's
right?
like Boomer.
Yeah, I mean, it's boomer.
Sorry, but that's
No,
why
I
I'm
mean,
over
that's
it.
curious.
I used to be like that as well, and I think it's just like not a good way to like stay the best, I guess.
Right, and I think in the week to week, it can be punishing to do that. But I've always my mentality on League has always been I want to be the best team when playoffs comes around.
That's fair.
I want to get the farthest, and I find that especially due to balancing changes, it's like if I get 2 wins in the regular season because I played Yumi on release. If I learn no transferable skills from playing with this champion and I'm just padding my win rate in the regular season, to me that's very low value.
But it goes both ways because
It
let's say for example this split, Viego and Gwen came out, and when they came out, I told my teammates I think they're both really OP. I played them, they feel really broken. Fudge agreed with me with Gwen, and then nobody else seemed to agree with me with Viego. And then in 2 or 3 weeks, Viego is being played on 3 roles. If you figure out the first, then you will also be the first one to figure out what to play against it and what is the counter meta to the first champion that is strong. And also on top of that, you will just be straight up better at a champion than anybody else.
That's very fair. I saw a tweet you made recently as well about new champions with regards to his name's not pronounced Action, but it's
actually
spelled
Action.
Action?
Action.
Action.
I'm gonna mess up the name, but I thought you had a really interesting tweet because a lot of people do have that belief that these new overloaded kits are not fun for the game, and you are on the opposite end. You like that, right?
I mean, okay, I think Action or whoever, I think he might be a bit maybe overbalanced, overtuned. If you compare him to,
he's just more balanced than everything else.
He's so balanced, it makes everything else feel unbalanced.
For me, this is more fun when the game is more flashy or more you have to think more. You actually have to think for example, against Viego, you really want to kill Viego in fights, You want to make sure he doesn't get the reset. You want to play around that, and all this Gwen, play around her bubble, When she uses bubble, you have 20 seconds to go in on her, There's counterplay to it where it's I think when the champions are OP, because they are pretty OP, right? Then it makes the games just more fun. People complain about it. I think the general narrative is oh, why is the champion so OP? Nerf it, please. But then, when there's Orianna Victor meta for 1 month, it's oh, this meta is so boring. Please remove mages. They're so boring. Yeah. It's just you can never please anybody. That's a national saying. You can never just make everybody happy.
I do think you have a point with erring on the side of new stuff being strong, because I talked to August, I think, and he didn't explicitly say, we're making all new champs OP, but he did say if they're bad, nobody wants to play them.
Yeah.
And part of something that I never considered until recently is when a new champ comes out, it's actually better for everyone if the champion is in a lot of games, not necessarily because you're playing it, but just having that champion in the game that you're playing against, that's on your team. It adds new experiences for everyone. And you've worked in game design. How do you see it as a game designer when it comes to balancing for you want to come up with new experiences for your players, things they haven't seen before, you trying to make the game fun and also different and also fair. I feel those are all sort of competing aspects of the game that it's really hard to do it perfectly.
I like to talk about games as you're designing experiences. People think of it as okay, you're making a champion or a card or whatever, but realistically what you're trying to do is create an experience that someone will have. And what is the experience of playing with or against this champion or with or against this card? And you want both those sort of things to be kind of a fun thing. And playing with it, it's got to feel like the things you're doing are cool, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to feel overpowered even if you're not, right? When Gwen goes immune to everything outside of her bubble for however long, it's that feels crazy and overpowered, but you need to make it so that, okay, this is something that seems awesome and busted, and the person doing it feels like a hero, but it's not too good, right?
I don't know.
So it's obviously
I don't know if Gwen has that second part.
I'm not,
they nailed the first part. She feels real OP in the bubble.
There's also a difference between something being OP and something being unfun.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a very important distinction, is that okay, a champion can be OP and we can rein that in and it can find a place in the meta and be fun to either play as or play against. There are some champions, there is a way that design can go where you're just oh no, this is just unfun.
For example, a Kali shrouding under your turret was
that was insane. Or Yumi release, Yumi is the only champ I could say I actually just hate it.
Oh, horrible.
I think so. There is extremes to it, right?
Yeah.
Akali was obviously insane as well. but it was my role, so.
I played her. I don't have an issue.
Sorry, guys.
If that's also part of the reason that, you know, in the draft mode or for like, you know, a lot of the competitive modes in Hearthstone, you have bans, right? It's like, oh, we screwed up. And, you know, like if something is oppressively powerful, it's like, okay, well, it just gets banned in these games. And while that's not like a fun experience, it's at least like a self-correcting part of the way your model's built in the first place, right? And that's like really, really valuable to have built into the system as a fail-safe.
Like I was playing last year Magic and I was abusing this deck that like would basically just make enemy just not have any fight at all in the game. It was like using Luka Planeswalker and then like Yorion and Agent of Treachery and just taking all their lands. Every time I would pull the card out, like they would just insta FF and they would just make me laugh. Like people already know, and I was just climbing, like I was like easily climbing the ranks, like just chilling enemy. Like I would have like 90% win with this deck, and it was so fun. And then like one day I log in and it's like Agent of Treachery is banned. I'm like, okay, I'm not playing Magic again. Exit.
So one of the things that has always kept me very interested in League, and I think a lot of players, is like having a main. But sometimes it's really frustrating for me when it's like I can't play my main because this other champ in the game just counters it way too hard. So, I mean, Kibler, you were a Zac main. I was a Zac main. But nowadays, I don't touch that champ. He's so bad. Like, he just can't play the game.
Canyon played him.
Who?
Canyon, yeah. Canyon actually crushed T1 with him.
Really?
Yeah. And then they banned him the next game because they got crushed so hard.
So maybe
time to bring him back. Bringing the blob back.
I mean, if they don't pick any of the 5,000 champs that can stop his jump effortlessly, then sure.
G2 look like they just want to disengage this one now. They already got the pick onto the enemy jungler. So many people! That's the Aatrox damage! And the Shy makes it happen!